Hello and welcome to my channel, Lady Green Thumb 2. Today is October the 13th and this will be the update for 2022. I'm going to show you how I'm harvesting my sweet potatoes. It's way overdue. Usually they take 120 days to mature, and I'm doing this so that I can clear my beds in one particular area to be ready to plant onions and garlic. And then I will also give an update to the moringa. This is the spot where I'm going to dig up my sweet potatoes, and I'll give you a close-up of the tag that I put in the ground of when these potatoes were, or the slips were put in the ground. And that was on April the 24th. And it has been more than 4 months. So I'm hoping that I get a very good harvest here. I believe the one that I'm going to dig out right now is a orange, but we will see together. And then there's also in the middle there another sweet potato that was planted, I believe, or a slip that was planted. So this area, as I mentioned, will probably be used for onions and garlic, and I will also try to clear this bed. This is bed 6, as much as I can. These beds actually stay nice and moist, I've noticed, even through the summer. So that's why I've chosen this spot for these 2 beds to plant them in. I'll probably keep the eggplant intact or not cut it down yet, because there are actually some eggplants. This is the long variety. I believe I saw 2 of them. Okay, let's begin to harvest. There I have my bucket, gloves, and my garden fork in the background. And I'm going to go ahead and dig outside of where I think the potatoes might be to loosen the soil. I wanted to be sure to get all the soil around the sweet potato loosened up. Now I'm using my pruners soon to cut away some of the longer branches, but keeping some intact so I can tell where the sweet potato could be at. At the same time, I'm collecting cuttings so I can root them in the house for hopefully planting next year. And now comes the big reveal. After I put on my gloves, I'm going to pull at the branches, and there we have it. A whole lot of sweet potatoes. What I'm doing now is very carefully digging around with my hands to see if there's any more potatoes, and I found a tag for regular harvested potato, but it had a grub that was eating away at it since it was in the ground for too long. Here is what was collected from the bed, and a grow some pot, additional pictures of a Japanese type sweet potato. What you see here is the rooting from a grow pot that I did empty out. That is a type of yam. It's purple and it's very slimy. In English it's called ubi, and in Gujarati it's called Khun. Unfortunately, I did not get much of a harvest here, but I'll keep trying each year. So I had so many slips left over that I decided to place them in an area by my kitchenette bed, and I got a bumper harvest in that spot. These are red chilies that I was gathering for at least a week, and I was finally able to get enough to make the red garlic chili sauce. I followed a recipe on YouTube, and I will add that to the description for this video below. I was very lucky to have gathered twice the amount that was needed and doubled the recipe accordingly. I must say the longest process was getting all the vegetables ready to cook. Luckily, I had the help of my husband. One addition I did make to this recipe is when it asks for frying the peppercorns, I did add a few star anise to fry for only a few minutes. Also, the very tender part of lemongrass, that is slithers of that, was added at the same time as when the garlic was added to the oil for sauteing. This is what the chili garlic sauce looks like when it is done. I was able to fill about 2 8-ounce jars. I will definitely be following and making this recipe again in the future, and I sure hope so that you check out the link in the description below and try it out for yourself. Hello and welcome back to the actual garden. I thought I would take you around the garden very quickly because it's the end of October and a lot has happened. We also almost had a freeze, so I harvested quite a bit and cleaned up as much as I could. So I will go ahead and start with the star of the garden, which is the peppers. And that would be bed number 1, and I had covered it after I picked most of the peppers from this area. This was the bed that most of the red peppers were collected from. You can tell here that this is a nice cayenne variety. The shishitos again are at the bottom. Not much left here. And then bed number 2 is the okra with cool season crops at the bottom, which include carrots, turnips, beets, and peas. This too is slowing down quite a bit because it's fall now and starting to cool down. Definitely a very windy day here, and hopefully my mic is blocking out all the noises, including the wind noise. And then bed number 3 has a cucumber that's trailing up. Hopefully this one takes. There was one that was down here at the bottom that just wilted and died. The pollination was not great. You can see the peas is climbing up here, and hopefully I get a pea harvest. And then peppers here that were planted later on in the season. I'll see what happens there if I get any more from there as well. And then this last bed here in the original raised bed is the basils, and I've harvested quite a bit of basil, and I am drying it for using over the seasons into next year. Of cool season crops too at the bottom here. Bed number 5 looks very cleaned up, as you can tell, or I can tell, because this was a lot of work. I had pulled out all the sweet potatoes from here, and that is posted earlier in the video. The eggplant is still producing. There's 2 eggplants, so I'm looking forward to having that. The pink tung eggplant in the back was collected, and I made a curry out of it. Here are some elephant garlic that are volunteers. I had planted additional garlic in this area here. And then the rest of the bed here were harvested regular garlic, and then I had a spillover, so I put some in this area as well. I might next year, that is very early in February, plant onions in the rest of this area. After there's ginger and turmeric and the okra here as well, which I will trim down. So I'm going to let them produce as much as they can. And then there's a lonely straggler here of, I believe this is the Barese Swiss chard. Along with planting garlic in these 2 spots, I had also placed them in these grow pots. I cleaned up quite a bit here, and I have been collecting a lot of twigs and compost. Still a little bit more cleanup to do, but these pots have 4 or 5 garlic in each pot. One of them has an elephant garlic, so I'm really experimenting to see how things do in the grow pot. And the entrance to the raised bed area, I have the Malabar spinach, which is at almost it's at the end of its life, and then on the arbor, the loofah. This one is looking great, and then you can tell that all the vines are climbing up and then back down on this side. Now moving on to the kitchenette bed on the side here, everything is looking great, including the peas. Hopefully I get some. And then there were pepper plants here. I've collected quite a few peppers, that is green peppers from here, and I pruned back a lot of the leaves because I wanted to have as much sun on the peas so it could produce. And it's the end of the season, so it made sense to do so. I'll see if that does overwinter if we get a mild winter, which from what I've heard, we are not. And then there's 1 pepper left on this, so I'm letting that ripen. The Swiss chards are looking very good here. There's also more peppers in the back, but I pruned that very lightly. And then I cleaned the bed up tremendously over here. And I may plant some herbs in this spot, even though I did broadcast a lot of different seeds here, such as parsley, dill, and cilantro. And then there's a lot of perennials over here. So this will all come back next year, which I'm really looking forward to it. I'll clean up the basil in the back over here. Moving on to the bedroom. I call this the bedroom bed, and it's the in-ground bed, but also next to it are these jalapenos, and this was also picked before I suspected that there would be a light frost. At the bottom of this bed, I actually planted out ranunculus that I had purchased when I would travel to San Diego, and I went to the farm there. So there's at least 10 of them planted in this area. And then I also had nasturtium that I had started, and I placed that in the ground as well. There's 4 over here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I did propagate branches of more things. One of them being hydrangeas. This is a different variety. I had already done this earlier. I have posted how I did it in another video. So if you're interested, take a look at that. I'm sure I'll be referencing that myself. And then there's a whole bunch of perennials here that will come back next year. One thing that did happen here is I had my gutters replaced, and the gutter was actually blocked, and I could not figure out why my clematis over here on this trellis was dead, as well as my clematis over here, which I brought all the way from Massachusetts, was not blooming again, and it was because the ground was too wet here due to drainage issues. So that was a lesson learned for me to really try to investigate what may be going on in the future. One of the other things that I did propagate branches of is the lantana. Lantanas love the heat, so I want to eventually move this once it does root to the front of my property. Moving on, behind the cabana, there's a whole lot of loofahs. There's one back there. There's one over here. And then if I move over onto this side, there's one over here, another, and then there's a baby one growing around here somewhere. Not sure if you can see that, but there's also another loofah on the roof or the gutter line. There's one baby one growing on this side and another one right here. So there's plenty that I'm going to be sharing with friends and family. And again, I also propagated this climber. I'm not too sure what it's called, but it looks so beautiful when it's going up a structure. I'll be sharing this with a friend and also propagating this in the front of my property. There's not as many loofahs on this side, or at least I cannot see them that well. This was the one side that was going right up the chimney here. I can see a really big one on this right over there. And then, oh, here's one right here. Quite pleased about what I'm going to be getting this year for the loofah. This is the fig patch, and I'll be trying to clean this up a little bit more. This is muscadine that I bought clippings or rootings of, and I'm letting it just go wild for now. The fig tree was also another thing that I rooted another additional branch, because you can never have too many fig trees. Now, since the fig tree is at its almost done producing, there is one lonely fig left here, and I'm watching it very closely because it's going to probably be the last one that's going to be edible for this season. Walking over to the apple patch, this is another branch rooting I did. It's the Turk's cap. There is so much bee activity on this. It's really, really nice to see. One thing to point out here, which I learned, I think year before last year, is that there's a bee right there. I'm trying to be careful here. Is that the female part of the Turk's cap, it grows something that resembles an apple, and this gets red, and eventually you can pick this off and eat it, and it tastes so good. So if you do have Turk's cap, that I would highly recommend that you try. And here's an example. Is one that is done, and I can just pick it off and I can eat this. Oh, that's so good. And then there's milkweed here. I did see a caterpillar, a monarch caterpillar, by my raised bed area, and I was very happy. It was hiding under a branch or a leaf. And then I did clean up this area here. This is the apple patch. It looks really bad. The grapevines, I've not been too happy about the production on it. I'm pretty sure it's because of the location they're in. It's not ideal. And I'm actually thinking of removing them or cutting them down to the base. So it opens things up here for me to plant other things that will thrive. And then here's the lemongrass, the Sylvia. And I'm going to also do branch propagation for those because those are sun loving. And I did prune back the rose bush over here. Walking over to the cabana area, I'm going to give you a very good view of the moringa. It looks amazing, and there are so many flowers on it. I sure do hope that I get some type of drumstick or fruit on it. I'm going to do a very close up here, if I can, with the wind. Look at those flowers. And they go all the way up. Now the cabana area here, I was also rushed into picking the peppers in this area. As part of harvesting what I could without losing so much, I ended up making a fire cider vinegar, which is a very medicinal, I would say maybe tincture or something you can have that is overall good for you and your body. And I will probably put a picture up here to show you what I ended up putting to make that fire cider. But as a result of harvesting so many things, I had utilized it in that manner. And peppers from here was one of the things that was added to that fire cider. Oh, and I cannot forget that I had also harvested a whole lot of Thai chilies from a pot in front of my entryway. Because I only have one of the peppers in this pot over here, I got a bumper harvest so far of red peppers from this area. They are the Thai chilies. I could not forget leaving this plant out because it really contributed to making the recipe I posted for this video. I would like to say thank you for watching and happy gardening.